Don't try this at home, kids.
For a solid week, one particular indie game took over all my Nintendo Switch playtime: Cyber Shadow. When you see this 8-bit platformer in action, its inspirations are immediately clear. NES classics like Ninja Gaiden and Mega Man come to mind. We will definitely get to those in this video, but first we have to start from the same place the developer started. Cyber Shadow was born from ROM hacks. And just to make sure I'm covered here, Framework in no way endorses any potential piracy one might commit when downloading emulators and ROMs.
Besides, the internet has always had this whole ninjas versus pirates thing. I think my suit tells you where I stand. Although I am a pretty big fan of One Piece.
Technically speaking, emulators, which spoof copies of games to let you play them on other devices like computers, aren't illegal. But downloading ROMs, aka unlicensed digital copies of games, definitely is, even if you own the game. But if you want to make personal backups of the games you already own, that is allowed.
Perfect. That way I can still hold on to Final Fantasy 1 and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Now that we've cleared all that up, let's dive right into the world of Nintendo emulation. There is no shortage of ROM hacks out there. Some of the most famous ones include Kaizo Mario, which trolls the player with brutal Super Mario World stages. Then there's a Link to the Past randomizer, which transposes every item in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past into a different random chest. These sorts of hacks take existing game assets and remix them into something new, allowing fans of the respective franchises to experience games they already love in a way they haven't seen before. But those are two 16-bit Super Nintendo hacks, and for Cyber Shadow's one-man developer Aarne Hunziker, the process begins a step earlier, with 8-bit art on the NES emulator NESticle. Yes, it's a balls joke. Aarne was gracious enough to answer my questions about Cyber Shadow for this video. According to his Twitter, @Mechaskull, he is sometimes a mechanical head. So, I'm gonna let that mechanical head speak for him here.
I got my first computer and got wind of an NES emulator, so obviously I had to have it. I found I could adjust the game graphics, so I got curious and started modifying them to something more fun. The drawings involved many Mega Man OCs.
Using NESticle, Aarne honed his craft by modifying existing pixels into new art pieces. I don't have any Mega Men to show you, but a quick check of his Instagram page does give us a glimpse at this lovely Star Wars mock-up, as an example.
Ninjas are also rivals with the Jedi. It's a thing.
8-bit art can be a tricky medium, because you are purposefully limiting your color palette and the size of your canvas. But Aarne doesn't view those limitations as negative.
With limits, you get your imagination racing by itself. Once you have the rules, you come up with ways to achieve goals within those rules. In Cyber Shadow, it's very hard to find an object that doesn't belong, thanks to the strictness of the rules.
There are 2 points to highlight here: imagination and belonging, thanks to the strictness of the rules, which we can shorten to the simple concept of coherency. Aarne's point about racing imagination with low-res art is proven by Cyber Shadow's fandom. This is how Shadow appears in levels, and this is how he appears in cutscenes. But this is how he's been drawn by fans all across the internet. Aarne himself even made a fake comic book cover as a piece of early art. As for the coherent art style, it's clear as you play the game. Urban levels look and feel like vertical cities. Chemical-filled sewers appear dank and sludgy. Flashbacks to protagonist Shadow's early days at the Ninja Shrine are pristine and mystical. The shrine aesthetic specifically brings to mind one of Aarne's key influences, The Legend of Kage. Compare this level, set inside a dojo, to one of the trials in Cyber Shadow. So, NES hacking led to the creation of 8-bit art, which in turn led to Aarne's own Cyber Shadow artwork, which is now inspiring additional fan art across the web. That's a pretty wholesome cycle. Of course, the code behind the art is just as important when developing a game.
That's why I apologize every time I hack.
Aarne dug into this code himself, and what he saw started him down the path of developing his own full game.
Some games have interesting designs that revolve around a fun math equation. On older systems especially, with limited resources, the math can be complex, so there are many examples of efficient and easy to manage movement patterns. Sine wave enemies are a common one.
Sine wave enemies have a self-explanatory name. They move in a sine wave pattern. The most infamous of these are probably the Medusa heads from Castlevania, swooping down at Simon as they glide across the screen. Compare that to this drifting robot head in Cyber Shadow. Same movement. Aarne didn't just take design cues from enemies, but bosses too. Here's me fighting the Scrambler. Now let's see how that looks alongside Gutsman from Mega Man 1, a game which of course inspired some of Aarne's original artwork. Movement patterns aren't just important for enemies. How Shadow moves on screen is crucial too. Ironically, it's when he stops moving that we see more influences from classic games. Sticking with Castlevania and Mega Man for the moment, both of those are known for a similar feature: freezing. I don't mean glitches, and I don't mean ice levels. I'm talking about striking the coolest pose possible anytime the game stops you, the player, in place. The fans know what's up. You beat a boss in Castlevania and make Simon crack that whip as the screen locks in place to count up your score. Same goes for Mega Man. Jump into that orb after beating a boss so you can feel heroic when you pose for that victory song. Cyber Shadow borrows this same screen freezing celebration. And of course, the way the levels themselves move also shows us where Aarne drew inspiration. Take a look at these rotating platforms in Cyber Shadow's first stage. Now see what that looks like besides Shadow of the Ninja, another of the major NES influences.
Big fan of all this ninja stuff, I gotta say.
So is Aarne. Those rotating platforms aren't the only thing lifted from Shadow of the Ninja. One of that game's key features is being able to collect weapons and power-ups for a short time. Cyber Shadow does the same thing. Some of my favorites include this handy energy shield and this little blaster that tags along with you like a fairy companion. What's notable is how the shield, the blaster, and all of the game's other power-ups don't require any extra input from you. They either act independently or complement the way you're already playing the game. And that's very deliberate. To revisit an earlier quote,
Once you have the rules, you come up with ways to achieve goals within those rules. With 8-bit stuff, making the game itself becomes a fun game.
For Aarne, that fun game was seeing how far he could take Cyber Shadow's simple 2-button gameplay. He certainly pushed it. While there are some custom control options, all of Cyber Shadow can be played with a D-pad and 2 buttons. Your entire range of abilities relies on these simple controls, from sprinting to throwing shurikens to casting fireballs. So many games of the retro era had to find creative solutions for limited player input, and that same design philosophy can be seen here. From artwork to enemy design to gameplay, the games that sparked Aarne's imagination to create Cyber Shadow are plentiful.
The inspirations are varied and continue to the realm of comics too. There are callouts to many other franchises I like.
I'd be remiss to make a video like this and not just list out some of those callouts, because the nods are just so strong.
Roll that montage.
It all starts with ROM hacking. Aarne creates custom art in his favorite 8-bit games. That leads to digging into the code to see how enemies and levels are designed. Then that leads to achieving his own goals within those 8-bit restrictions. And after a few years of development, we get Cyber Shadow. It's pretty rad to see how quickly this throwback game has already caught on. The speedrunning community is all over it, and Aarne is thrilled.
The things they achieve are incredible. Feels surreal to watch 5 years of development time be blasted through in little over an hour.
YouTuber Nico Bellic even pulled off an impressive no-death run. So it's clear Cyber Shadow has some longevity. And that's a good thing, considering Aarne says there's so much more story in his head that didn't get used in this one game. I'll be curious to see where the narrative goes, but what really gets my gears turning is wondering what other NES classics we'll be able to pick out in the potential sequel.
Okay, I am definitely ready to get out of this sweaty costume, but first, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you like what Framework is doing, you can hit that subscribe button in the middle to keep up. It would help me out an awful lot if you did, and if you want to see our latest video, that's on the far left. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.